Raw dairy. You mentioned three foods that you thought were somewhat perfect to be consumed, or the purpose really is to be consumed by other mammals or living organisms: fruit, honey, and dairy. It's a pretty foundational to our pyramid here. It's nose to tail animals at the bottom, and then we love our raw dairy, we love fruit, we love honey, and sweetening things that way. If you're going to go down the higher carbohydrate, it became very popular in the last couple of years, even made its way to the political stage. I know you've
Mhm.
been an advocate, but you're pretty bullish on the raw dairy.
We only have a few minutes left, and you hit me with dairy now. Really? um, in the context of milk, liquid milk, raw dairy, good raw dairy is 100% the gold standard by far. There's no comparison for a number of different reasons. But I will say this: we adult humans are different than we were as infant humans,
Mm,
and when you look at it from an ancestral stance, liquid milk is a brand new thing, except for when we were infants, right? Other than the Samburu and the Maasai who drink raw milk and blood every single day, a combination, mixed up. Indigenous and traditional groups don't drink milk. Like, it's not a thing. And there's a
right.
number, and it's so weird for us to fathom because the entire dairy industry in this world is based on liquid dairy, which requires refrigeration and
Yep.
pasteurization and all these other sorts of things. So while if we're talking about liquid milk, raw milk is the gold standard. The platinum, right? The next step up is fermented dairy. And the reason that fermented dairy is that much better is because when we ferment dairy, we're actually replicating what happened inside of our bodies as infant humans when
Mm,
we were consuming the milk. So when we take milk and we make kefir or yogurt or even better, aged cheeses or clabber or that sort of thing, we are taking a food that for many of us, right, there's 60 to 70% of adult humans in this world are lactose intolerant that many of us can't handle as humans. And using a natural biological process, the same one that happened inside of our bodies when we were infants, replicating that, and now we turn it into something that we can safely and efficiently derive nutrition from. So when we ferment our dairy, the lactobacillus bacteria are eating the lactose, reducing that, and the longer it ferments, the less that's there. So, our yogurt that we make here at the Modern Stone Age Kitchen, we ferment for 24 hours. It is a lactose-free food. Most of your traditional, especially
mm.
aged cheeses, are lactose-free foods naturally because it was consumed by the bacteria. So if your issue with dairy is lactose, then fermented dairy is something that you should pay attention to. But I will say this too, and I just recently really understood the power of this. In the 1930s, Dr. Weston Price, did his work and traveled the world, and he figured out, one of the things he documented with all these different diets is this key thing in most of these diets he called the activator X. And he didn't know what it was, but he knew it was key to everybody being healthy. And in 2007, Chris Masterjohn figured out that he was talking about vitamin K2.
Yeah.
One of the best sources of vitamin K2 in the world is fermented dairy. And especially we call mesophilic fermented dairy. So dairy can ferment at different temperatures, but the ones that ferment at room temperature we call mesophilic fermentations, and those produce not only the most amount of K2, but the most diverse. There's different forms of K2, the most diverse forms of K2. Now, K2 does a lot of different things. It helps to it's necessary to synthesize vitamin D, vitamin A, and it also tells calcium where to go in the body. It's like go into the bones and don't go into your heart and into your arteries. So K2 is incredibly important. And dairy from grass-fed animals has some K2 in it. Not a ton, but it has a little bit in it. All fermented dairy, mesophilic fermented dairy, has an increased amount of K2 in it. And I'm not a fan of milk coming from grain-fed cows, but because of the way the K2 is produced during the fermentation, you can even get K2 in a fermented dairy product that came from an animal that was eating grain. Again, I'm not saying that that's what we should be doing.
Right.
So I bring that up because in the world of having these conversations about food and diet and health and all these things and processing, we tend to default back to categories or terms that could mean a wide range of things: bread, butter, milk. And those are, to even have a conversation using just those terms
Mm.
is absolutely ridiculous. One of the things that Weston Price Foundation loves is butter, and they should. Butter is an amazing food. Fermented butter made from fermented cream, which is the way butters are made for 6,000 years, is a completely different food than sweet cream butter. And this vitamin K2 is a great example of that.
Dude, that's such a good call out, and a teaser for the next time we run it back, because there's so much more we could get into. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.